Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets kick off the West Coast trip in style with a late game hold off against the Sacramento Kings. We break down how Cam Thomas led the way for the Nets, all coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know this episode is sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA to get $20 off your first purchase. And Doug, we kick it off West Coast style, 108-103. Brooklyn Nets with an explosive start to this game, and then did what was necessary defensively at the end to hold off the Kings and get a big win here after they had a disappointing loss at the end of last week against the 76ers.
I mean, I'm at a point now where it's like just about every single thing that at least I said before this season has been wrong. It's been actually pretty impressive.
But consistency matters, by the way, just to be clear. Like it's not just all negative.
Does matter. It does matter for sure. But, I mean, we're at the point now, even coming off that loss to the Sixers, going on to the West Coast, getting this win against the Kings with no Schroder. And this is the King thing, too, because we're going to talk about Cam Thomas here in a second. But among the many other things that I said that was going to happen this year, going under on the wins. I'm going to be wrong about that one. They're already at 7 wins. Under the 18.5 wins. They're at 7 right now. I'm already taking the L on that one, no problem. Many other claims I made, but another one was, if Schroder gets hurt, they have no chance on offense. That's something I've said many times too. It's like, you want the tank to go into full effect? Have Dennis Schroder get hurt and see what happens to the guard play. What wrong? You go into Sacramento. They go into Sacramento, 108-103 against a good Kings team. And Cam Thomas, is one of the big factors here. But again, the Nets just have such a team style to their game that they are able to sort of just like withstand even these pieces like Schroder, who I'm like, well, he's irreplaceable on this team. They have no other like sort of functional, real, solid 1-point guard. And they just go out there, with a 5-point victory on the road, on the West Coast against the Kings. Wrong about everything. And excited to talk about the rest of this game.
There are some things too. Cam Johnson, obviously his overall game this season has been really impressive. He helped out in that aspect as well in this win. But just as the footnote, I get to still be right about taking the over on the wins for the Brooklyn Nets this season. Now, does it matter that if you go back and you check it, I say, well, 17.5, 18.5, that's a low number. So they can win 20 games. I'm still on the right side of it. So I take that win and I'll carry it forward no matter how many they end up taking down here. But to your point, with no Dennis Schroder in this game. And by the way, when you go and you look at the box score, there's only one other player who took double digits in shot attempts here, and that's Cam Johnson. Everybody else, 9 or fewer. Obviously, the usual suspects of Ben Simmons and Nicholas Claxton sharing the starting lineup at the beginning of this game, combining for 6 shots between the two of them across 50 minutes of action. But Cam Thomas, 22 shots, knocks down 11, 4 of 10 from deep, 8 of 11. So getting at the line, we talk about attacking the basket, especially if you're in the absence of having Schroder on the floor there. And it also kicks in 6 assists, which is just 2 off of his career high, something we've made mention of now a couple of times this year in games where we thought he could get across the line and maybe set a new standard for himself. 34-point performance. I mean, this is, just to your point, if you're going to lose what we think is one of your key facilitators, thankfully, Jordi Fernandez has put a system in place where you can still be functional offensively, but then you look to someone like this, who we've kind of talked about the ebb and flow, taking less shots, trying to be a more complete player. But this is the kind of game where you go, oh, you're ready to cook? Go ahead, Cam. We'll go ahead and take a back seat here and let you get us what was a monstrous lead at the end of the first quarter. They led most of this game until the third when things started to kind of get brought back, reeled back in, by the Kings, which is a standard operating procedure for most NBA games.
Yeah, look, Cam still had a really high usage in this game, right? 22 shots, 11 trips to the line, super efficient once again. But the key for him, well, 2 things happened here. The Kings didn't blitz him and trap him as much as they probably should have, considering Schroder wasn't even on the court. There was not that many other scoring options that the Nets had that were going to really be able to punish him. And they just really never took it to Cam in a way that was going to really press him into mistakes. Because we saw from that Sixers game I don't think we podcast after that Sixers game, but like they blitzed him the whole time and he didn't know what to do. He was a total turnover machine against the Sixers.
One of his worst games in terms of protecting the basketball, and then to one of his best games in this one. Yeah.
Totally. Like he just couldn't, like he looked very out of sorts, right? Like just like dribbling out of bounds, like just trying to split doubles and not being able to get there. They didn't really do that to him. And then he just had such clean looks. Like even when he had the looks, they were pretty clean. He gets to the line a lot, which he's one of the better guys in the league at doing, just especially when you consider his size. So he was super efficient. But then you add in that did he lead the team in assists? I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah, like he had 6 assists, which was the team lead, and only 1 turnover. So it was like exactly the opposite of what happened with that Sixer game. When you have the 6-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, and you're going to be super efficient from the field, like that is a formula for your team to win, even without the point guard, right? Yeah. And so it's just like, kudos to him. Kudos to the Kings for really not pressing the issue. They should have done that more. I don't think they should have just done it every time he touched the ball, frankly. Like I really sold out. Because I just don't know where else the Nets would have gotten tons and tons of scoring from outside of Cam Johnson. But overall, you really have to just say, like, Cam, like, what a bounce back game for him, because the Sixer game looked almost as bad as it could get for him. And to come back and just do the exact opposite here is like exactly what you want to see from him.
Yeah, great development on his part, right? And not coming back and maybe getting a little bit gun shy, although we would never expect Cam Thomas to be that. And then, oh, by the way, I mean, I will just, not to throw shade at the Kings, but to have that be the most recent sample size of Cam Thomas against the 76ers and the way they attacked him defensively, to come back out and go, you know what, though? Maybe, and the only thing I can really think to this is that without Dennis Schroder, and even though we talk about it on a game-to-game basis, hey, the Nets are a more surprising team. The Nets are going to make you work every single game. They're better coached now this year. Maybe other teams just look at it and keep going, yeah, but are they really? To walk into a game and say, well, we'll let Cam get his, and then we'll see if anybody else can step up. If that's your mentality, it's obviously backwards. Like, take away Cam Thomas and then ask the questions of everybody else in a game like this. And now you get to the point where the bounce back from Cam Thomas, I'll just say, you go back in the 22 shots. He did that 3 games back against that first matchup against the Knicks. This has been talked about before, and I'll just bring it up because we like to dissuade the notion. Cam Thomas shooting a lot, Cam Thomas being your high point scorer, and Cam Thomas helping the Nets win a basketball game, something that for his entire career, no matter how much he's played or not, so many have come in and said, well, that's the problem. Cam Thomas has the ball a lot. Cam Thomas scores a lot. Team loses games. No, they won this basketball game. So, and it's entirely because you had Cam Thomas on the court for this one. Coming up here in a second, though, what about the other guys that did some things for the Brooklyn Nets in this game, including one Cam Johnson, who I don't know, might just be a revelation after getting rid of Mikal Bridges. We'll dive into his performance and the bench as well, all coming up next.
All right, before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at Skims. Look, sometimes that underwear drawer needs a little bit of an update. Some of you might not have switched to the type of underwear you're wearing since college. I know for me, it doesn't get an update all that often. For those that haven't heard, Skims now offers men's underwear, and it's definitely worth the hype. Look, if you like that good square cut 3-inch boxer brief, you're not going to like when it's just riding up. But look, we're out there, we're being active. Maybe you're coaching, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're just at work, maybe you're just moving around a lot. You're on the move. Luckily, Skims found a way to create the perfect 3-inch stretch boxer brief. Gives you all the movement that you need throughout the day, and perfect comfort for those long trips on the road too, without ever riding up. They're not going to lose their shape either. All other 3-inch boxer briefs have officially been put on notice. Shop Skims men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA. Let them know we sent you. After you place your order, you're going to select podcast in the survey. Select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gift for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever. Also available at skims.com/LockedOnNBA. That's skims.com/LockedOnNBA.
All right, so as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about the 108-103 victory on the West Coast, of course, the fan base rejoices, but also laments, and I already got things in my DMs about how so much for tanking for Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey, and there's probably conversations to be had. The Nets will, of course, also be right back in the action here on Monday night against the Golden State Warriors on this West Coast trip before going off days in between with the Phoenix Suns and then coming back home on Friday for the Orlando Magic. So the 3-game West Coast trip has some nice challenges and some familiar faces when they get Phoenix. When we look inside this game, Cam Johnson, there's no other way to put this. And I think you tweeted it out the other day, so I want to make sure I give you credit. That The New York Knicks just traded for the wrong twin. And that happens. When two things look so similar side by side, you don't know which one's the right one. This is exactly the player that you and I talked about and said, oh, maybe if Cam Johnson continues to expand his game, the Nets could X a year ago. And he never did. And we were bummed out by that. Cut two, he's doing all these things, and I can only directly relate it to, as we've done with so many guys, the coaching. Like, it just seems like Jordi Fernandez has been doing such an excellent job of unlocking the extra piece of an offensive game. Beyond the scoring for Cam Johnson is also the ability to impact the game in other ways. So he gives you 16 points in this one, second highest score, obviously, in the starting unit. We'll get into the bench here along the way, but 5 of 11, 3 of 6 from deep, 3 of 4 at the line. But more, as important as that, I should say, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal to go along with it as well. And just like you mentioned with Cam Thomas, highly efficient, just 1 turnover.
Yeah, if you look at Bridges, what I tweeted out was about the difference in efficiency from Bridges and Cam, because Cam has been like one of the most efficient players in basketball this year. I had 50% from the field, 43% from 3, 91% from the line, and Bridges was like 48, 30, 62 or something like that. Like on more volume, And so, last year early in the season, we had said like, oh, Cam Johnson, maybe he's got a chance for like most improved player award because he's going to have so much more. He's going to have so much more usage. And like, that was definitely probably for sure an overstatement, but then he just dealt with injuries all season long. Just never really get it going. Thank goodness that he did not do this last year, because if he did this last year, we'd have just a totally different story. They would have stuck with Bridges. They would have been just like good, like, slightly over 500. It would have been like a good enough team. They would have unloaded everything else and try to get someone around those 3 guys. And maybe some people say, oh, that's what they should have done. But I never would have thought that would have been correct. It would have just still had such a ceiling on it. That being said, so anyway, I think him like not really unlocking all of it and then them not having like a third scorer on their team last year contributed to them being like, this isn't really happening. Maybe they also just saw the writing on the wall that Bridges, the wheels might be coming off a little bit too. I mean, he's been really pretty bad with the Knicks. So, I mean, anyway, this is not an anti-Mikal thing, but the overall Cam Johnson is playing this year kind of like what we thought he might play like last year, in terms of like getting great looks. And you mentioned, or getting good looks and just being more of a focal point of the offense. You mentioned Jordi Fernandez. The system they run is just all about unlocking threes, right? It's just all about unlocking threes from these guys. They run these drag options all the time. They run the dribble handoff stuff into guys who pop out into cell screens and then pop out. Like, it just allows them to get away with sort of like lack of tons of on-ball creation while still a movement offense that just has defenses constantly chasing shooters. And that's one of the reasons his looks are clean. Like, these aren't like tough 3-point looks. He said he had a couple pretty far ones, but for the most part, his shots are super clean look and efficient shots. And so when you pair that with a guy who just definitely can shoot and thinks a lot about shooting, like if you heard him on JJ's podcast last year, it was like, oh, this guy really thinks about shooting a lot. He's just putting it all together. So it's awesome to see. The other thing I tweeted was wrap this guy in bubble wrap now and just trade him, because the worst thing is like the stock will never be higher. He's been one of the most surprising players in basketball this year, I think.
No, I mean, listen, you talk about it too, and obviously our expectations. He's a 19-point scorer, 16 in this game, but he's averaging 19 points per game on the season. That's what we talked about. Oh, could he maybe join getting in towards that 20-point score a year ago? Never got there. You mentioned dealing with the injuries, playing over 33 minutes, almost 34 minutes a game. He's never done that in his career, by the way. So most minutes he's played per game in his career. Last year, he was playing under 28. He's averaging almost 2 shots, a little over 2 shots more per game, more efficient from the field, averaging 2 more 3-pointers per game, more efficient from beyond the arc, getting to the line more, over 3 times per game, doing that more efficiently than he's ever done in his career, over 90%, right? So to your point there, as far as it goes with wrapping him up, it's like, it's never going to get better. And I don't mean it's never going to get better because, oh, he's shooting a little bit hot. This is the best he has ever played in his career from every statistical standpoint. And you have to, this is the hardest part for me. And I know we've talked about this before. Listen, I want the Nets to make the right organizational decisions. I want them to also try to navigate keeping themselves closer to the top of the draft and moving towards the middle of the pack and falling out of the lottery, etc. But when you've been so starved for quality play on the court, it is hard. I mean, for me personally, to be like, he's playing so darn well. Okay, let's get him out of here. Because it just does detract from the ability to appreciate what Jordi Fernandez is accomplishing. Now, the other side of that is, let's see what he does with the next guy up. Let's see how he continues to develop the other young players on this roster and where you go from here. But for Cam Johnson, listen, he already has the contract. The nice thing, I guess, for him would be, for us as well, it looks like that contract, it doesn't need to be as bad as it looked from a years and dollars standpoint. If he's going to perform at this level, contending teams across the league are going to, I would say, be very close to having that conversation about, so how many assets does it take to get him? Whereas coming into this season, we thought there's just this world where you play out the whole year because it's going to be hard to convince someone to take that money, even for the value he brings as a shooter from the perimeter.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I'm with you on the part where it does seem like they just don't want to roll over. I appreciate that, by the way. I know everyone is like, or people are upset with, oh, well, this is going to ruin their tanking odds and they're going to get a worse draft pick. It might be the case. These are hard needles to thread here. Like with being a watchable team that has to sell tickets and have the guys take pride and try to develop professionals and have a professional atmosphere, it doesn't always coincide with, go out there and stink. And we've seen teams that kind of hold on to that ethos a little too long, and it's hard to get out of. So I appreciate the part where they go in there and fight every night. I'll tell you, the podcasts are way more fun to do when they win. It's just, that's it. Point stop. That's obvious, right? This is what fandom is all about. Him playing like this, though, it does leave you in this, Cam Johnson, that is, it leaves you in this weird middle ground, because on the one hand, you're like, hey, if you're 2 years from now and he's playing okay, and he's a really great guy to have on a team, he's a guy you would want on a team that's decent for sure, right? This is why you would want, and he's a great, and I just said, consummate professional, super smart, thinks about the game a lot. These are the types of guys you want around your young players, and they have 4 freaking draft picks next year. Yeah. 4 guys in the 4 first round draft picks. 4 first round draft picks coming in the door. This is the kind of guy you would like on your team, with 4 first-round draft picks coming in. Professionalism, day in, day out, playing hard on a bad team. It would kind of stink to lose them. And, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? It's weird. This is a weird push and pull here, I think.
Fan Take Friday question, I think, that we'll answer for ourselves as well is, would you be willing or interested in keeping Cam Johnson around, even with the tank agenda and even with the young roster? Is he a player that at a certain point you do look at the value to your team beyond this season and say, okay, if we didn't get the right offer, if it wasn't the thing that made us go, well, there's no way we could refuse, right, from a team who's coming to the table looking to get Cam Johnson from the Brooklyn Nets. Okay, there's far worse players to have in your roster and a part of your team. And it's different than Dorian Finney-Smith because of the age. It's different than, I'm only talking about contracts here, different than Ben Simmons because you've been waiting to get off of that money. Dennis Schroder, same thing, right? Veteran guys. But there's something I think about Cam Johnson because of the age, the skill set, and a little bit of that veteran value that you're always going to want to have. And if you're talking about just getting dollars in the door for the salary cap floor, well, at that point, I'll make considerations around guys that I already have here and have already proven themselves capable of giving everything they have, even on a bad team, even in a rough season, and even when the goal is to get to the bottom so you can hopefully be at the top. Coming up here in a second, though, one more young player. And Noah Clowney coming off the bench, giving a heck of a performance. And yes, a little nod to the tank odds and where we stand before we look at the Golden State Warriors on Monday night. We'll do that to close things out. All coming up next.
All right, before we get into that, tell you our friends over at FanDuel, no better time to get in on the action than our friends over at FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers are going to get $5. You get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app, it's going to give you everything you need to place live bets on the NBA, on the NFL. It's all in one place. If you head on over to FanDuel right now, Nets are on the back-to-back here, going into Golden State, plus 12.5. Now, we already know they covered last night. So, again, the against the spread stuff for the Nets this year, best in the league. So, we're already going to take that. Little bit more to think about here on the back-to-back against a good Golden State team. We're still going to 12.5 over at FanDuel. You know why? Because Nets against the spread has been one of the best bets you can make all season long. You head on over to FanDuel. You get yourself started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 real money bet. That's over at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And when you're done with that, And when you're done with that, head on over to our friends over at Gametime. Look, whether you're going to the game, you're going to the comedy show, you're going to the theater, you're going to the concert, you want to make sure you're getting tickets at the best price. You're going to want to make sure you're getting exactly what you see when you sit down. That's why you got to head over to our friends at Gametime. You go to Gametime right now. Got a couple of different pretty amazing options, frankly. You got NBA Cup stuff over here on Friday, Magic at Nets. That's starting at $35. Then you don't want to pay the $35. That's okay. Not NBA Cup. It's not going to see the same exact court. You're still going to get the Magic, though. 2 days later, that's Magic at Nets. That's starting at $14. A little Sunday afternoon action. Cam Thomas, pin day? Come on, stop at Gametime. You got me too much there. All the deals you can want, all the stuff you can need over at Gametime. Like I said, you're going to see the seats, exactly what you're going to see when you sit down. They got those flash zone deals. They got the insurance protection. You got yourself completely covered over at Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
All right, so as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about the 108-103 victory, Nets improved to 7-10. The great news about the Brooklyn Nets, by the way, as a side note, playing on Friday night in a cup game where we were talking about, hey, this is how you can get back in the mix and make it exciting. They don't, and it's not going to be. So the cup isn't going to matter for the Brooklyn Nets this year, in spite of having one more game coming up against the Orlando Magic. That's okay, because they're doing other things, like making impressive starts to their West Coast trip here. And a big part of that, too, was something we may not get to talk about on this episode, the starting lineup and getting that Nicholas Claxton, Ben Simmons sample size.
Oh, real quick. Sorry, real quick about that.
Yeah,
I want to say one more. This is going to take 2 seconds. One more. Sure. I wanted to say it before. It's perfect segment. Other things I was wrong about. I was like, Ben Simmons and Claxton could never play together. 31 minutes plus 6.5 net rating so far. So anyway, I know the sample size is small, but just to add to the list of things Doug's been wrong about this year, we'll just look. I always like to do the I'm wrong audit. And this one is another one. Sorry. So keep going with what you're saying. I just wanted, it's not worth the whole segment, but I wanted to throw that one in there.
Nothing wrong with two players in the starting lineup only combining for 6 shots, and yet it still works somehow. That's the way the NBA and way the Brooklyn Nets work sometimes. 18-point performance, 5 of 9 from the field for Noah Clowney, 5 of 8. So one shot, not a 3-pointer. Every other shot, 3-pointer, and all of his makes came from deep. 62.5%, just in case you're doing the math at home. 3 of 4 from the free throw line, though, as well. Came away with a couple rebounds, a block, a steal, 18 points, as I say, they're across 22 minutes, which does mark by 2 minutes over the game back on the 11th against the Pelicans. Also a win, incidentally. 20 minutes played in that game, 15-point performance. So season high in minutes for Noah Clowney, clearly continue to develop. And I will say, one notable thing about going with a starting lineup of Simmons and Claxton, go back to the preseason when Clowney was talking about Fernandez and what the ask was when he was on the court, playing between the 4 and the 5 and understanding his role, especially defensively. I think his development is obviously going to be a season-long process. But if you can talk about him being a high-volume perimeter shooter to go along with his defensive value, these are some of the things we've seen glimpses of going back to the end of last season. Really good game for him from a shooting perspective.
Yeah, he's at 38% from 3 on the season, 37% for his career. I mean, it's not like a super long career, but that's a really encouraging sign. He's been exactly the same numbers with a slight uptick this season on considerably more 3-pointers. Like he was taking 1.4 threes per in 16 minutes last year, 16.5 minutes a game this year at 4.1. So he's like tripled his 3-point attempt output. That's awesome. Like higher percentage at more volume, like you'll take that all day long. And if that's the kind of player he's going to be, the Nets have something. I think the only surprise really for us this year for him is that the minutes aren't like higher than they are. I think like we thought going into this year, we maybe see some spot starts from him. We would see like, him just maybe being 6-man off the bench with 20, 22 minutes, 23 minutes, something like that. So the fact that it's only at 16 is pretty much the only surprise here. I know they did tick up here in this Kings game. Everything else you've seen from him has been really great. Like no other way around it. I think that at this point, probably now he's probably even projecting more to just be a 4, which is even better, by the way.
Yeah.
Like if he's going to project to just be a spacing 4, and he can play against with guys like Claxton, play with Sharp. Like you can do these like cobbled together center lineups with Simmons. Like that's just an even more versatile player than I think that they had. So it's been really, really encouraging. With I said the only thing that's discouraging is just you don't see him more. I think otherwise it's like everything about what he's done so far has been great. And if Man, the shooting sticks. I mean, forget about it. Like 38%. If you shoot 38% from three with his frame and his defensive skills, it's awesome.
Yeah, and it is what makes for an exciting season when you can see a young player like that developing. And just you did mention getting a player like Day'Ron Sharpe back. I think that can only help in terms of how Noah Clowney develops his role to have another big body. Because obviously, as we know, the one thing right now is you're all string beans, or Ben Simmons, who's not going to be that guy that's really going to anchor down in the paint when it comes to the defensive end of the floor, can do other things in a versatile way. The other note here real quick. So there's a couple of things I want to get to. One, tip of the cap to Shake Milton, who hasn't really done a lot to get overly excited about, hasn't really seen the court a ton this season. But with no Dennis Schroder, he comes off the bench in 21 minutes, goes 4 of 6, gives you 10 points, gives you 3 assists. Again, just 1 turnover for him. So, ball handling duties, trying to spread it out a little bit. Everyone, for the most part, did a good job across the board in that category. The other thing, man, which is at a high level here, box score. When you go over and you see all 5 starters for the Kings were in double digits in this game, 31 points from Fox, 21 points from Murray. Now, DeRozan, 18, 13 from Sabonis, and then Herter came in with 11. But then you scroll down to their bench, 0 points. And you had 3 players that played 17 minutes or more off the bench. You can, go past McDermott, go past Len. You had 3 players playing real minutes, 8-man rotation. Not a single shot went down for them. They did not.
No. Sorry, I'm going to pause you real quick. Keon Ellis scored 9 points.
Oh, he snuck in. I know. You know what? I was just scrolling down to the bottom and going, hold on. There's Ellis, 9 points.
Point remains the same. 9 points from your bench. 9 points from your bench is
still,
basically
thank goodness
0.
it still holds. That it's a terrible bench performance, even if nice save, nice catch by you. Because by the way, I was about to do the hard math of as I look through the box score. Now, how can a guy be 3 for 4 from beyond the arc and the bench have 0 points? Nevertheless, 9 points from the bench unit for the Kings here in this one. To go back to the Noah Clowney 18 points, Milton with 10. You end up getting over 30, almost 40 points from the bench unit, spread out with 7 from Wilson, who only had a couple of looks in this game from deep, but knocked down 2 out of 3. And then Keon Johnson as well. Like, this was and is always the case, as we've talked about often, with when you're a bad team, but you maybe got some quality bench players, it's always going to kind of be the everyone needs to contribute to get wins, not, well, if our starting 5 does their job, we get across the finish line. The Kings kind of operate that way, or try to in this game, and it wasn't enough. You need someone else beyond one player off your bench to come in and contribute, and that's just a good sign of team basketball for the Brooklyn Nets and ways that they can get across these wins. You need these contributors. Anybody on that bench doing less, and you're talking about a game where the Nets are trailing in the fourth quarter and need someone to continue to step up like Cam Thomas to get them across the line.
Well, it's funny because the way the system they run is sort of personnel independent, right? Like the Nets don't really switch their stuff up depending on who's in the game. Like
these are
they
roles.
run
Play your role.
They run the same actions pretty much. I mean, no matter who's in there. And so that does make it so it's kind of easy to kind of pick and choose or just like slot guys in, right? Like they're running a lot of the same actions. Like I said, they don't run tons of pick and roll without Schroder, but they are running just like more motion stuff. And if you have everyone just sort of just continuing to move on offense, I mean, it's such a difference. Like looking at this team compared to, just go back and look at this team on the amount of motion on their offense, like on the offensive end compared to last year when it was just an absolute quicksand fest where like it was just one guy has the ball running into, dribbling into a defender, tough shot, totally brutal. And it's just such a difference. And so that does allow you to kind of bring in some of these guys, mix and match different dudes like Shake, like Keon Johnson, bring in guys like Clowney, Jalen, like they could any one of those guys, at least the wings could start. I mean, we had Zaire start here, but like all those other guys could start too. Like it really wouldn't matter too much, I think, on the overall output. And that's just a good sign. That's what that is like sort of the floor raising aspect of this team is that they can get quality contributions off the bench and still kind of hang in games.
Golden State Warriors on tap tonight here on Monday night. Do you have the spread up by any chance? We'll get
our plus 12. That's plus 12.5.
Wow.
Golden State's been good.
I'm going to take it.
Taking 12.5. You have to. I'm
going to take this.
Let me just real quick get this against the spread. This is good podcasting when people just look stuff up. Nets. Oh, they're second
on YouTube as well, so you can see it.
Yeah, Cleveland's 14-4, and Nets are second, 11-5. All right, we'll still take them against the spread. All right, my camera is going in and out. And this has been a fun podcast like that. Make sure that you subscribe to Locked On Nets, where you can see my camera going in and out 5 days a week. We're just showing up every single morning, and you can see no, what's else happening? Nothing. Just the camera goes in and out. That's just how we roll. Subscribe to Locked On Nets over at YouTube.
By the way, this was Jordy Fernandez, a return to Sacramento. How about the best revenge is massive success. And that is Frank Sinatra.
I'm one of the all-time great poets. We're back in tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Old blue eyes. Basketball. Yeah.